Karyn, a very good morning to you. Once again, postponement. It was anticipated that it would be postponed. But as you mentioned earlier, we've seen quite a few interesting outcomes this morning out of the very brief court appearance that occurred.
Well, the magistrate that formally handled this case, Desmond Nair, isn't in court at the moment because he's actually serving as a High Court judge. And the acting chief magistrate, Daniel Tulwawe, was supposed to postpone this case very briefly, but instead, during the process, not only questioned the state about the level of evidence gathering that it had done against Oscar Pistorius, wanting reassurances that in fact, and wanting knowledge and information about what matters were still outstanding, but also went on a bit of a tirade about what he said was potentially scandalous and contemptuous activities by officials involved in the case. Now, he didn't directly reference the so-called leaking of crime scene or reconstructed crime scene images to an international broadcaster, but it very much seemed to be the line that he was taking. He suggested that certain activities by officials, possibly policemen, could result in Oscar Pistorius having what he described as a trial by media. And he wanted assurances from the state that there would be investigations also conducted by the police and that Pistorius's rights would not be infringed. Prosecutor Andrea Johnson said that the state was in total agreement with what the magistrate said, but was unable in all circumstances to control how the level of interest in this case and how it was reported on. So, of course, at the end of that, the magistrate really making it clear that the courts won't entertain possible leaking or preemptive evidence being put out into the social media space or the broadcast space and potentially prejudicing Oscar Pistorius's trial. Of course, his lawyer, Barry Rue, saying that he fully agreed with the magistrate's assessment of the situation and it was indeed a concern for the defense.
Okay, Karyn, but what's also interesting here is, of course, the magistrate coming out and saying that there needs to be some kind of investigation within the NPA. But apart from that, what about media also taking flack down the line and also being, getting into some form of trouble, also facing charges? Do you think that's likely? And as you were saying, there weren't really any sort of clear outcomes as to what the magistrate was alluding to when he was talking about contempt of court.
Well, firstly, Eleni, the broadcaster is an international broadcaster. So jurisdictionally, what could a South African court really do to them, or the National Prosecuting Authority or police? The only real action that they can take is against the officials who were involved in this, who were clearly on the version of the magistrate and on the version of the defense, certainly, in the wrong. Now, we know that the broadcaster in question has vociferously denied that anyone was paid for those images. Of course, the former investigating officer in this case, Hilton Botha, maintaining that he very much believed that a police official was responsible for cell phone images of the reconstructed crime scene in which Reeva Steenkamp's dried blood is clearly visible on the bathroom floor where she was fatally shot. The only real steps that they can take is against any official who is found to have taken those photos and given them to public or international media organizations. But aside from that, there's very little they can do. And there doesn't seem to be a great appetite on the part of the police to really acknowledge that they need to do anything about this. They've taken the line that these are not official crime scene images, and therefore their hands are tied in terms of even bringing about an investigation into finding out how this happened.
All right, so other outcomes this morning is the fact that the prosecution needs more time to sort out various parts of the investigation. The magistrate querying what those elements are, and the prosecution saying that they're not in a position to talk about it as yet. Karyn, you've been watching this story playing out quite extensively. What parts of the investigation would you say still need to be filled in?
Well, we know that the vast part of the forensic investigation has been over for quite some time. Ballistics, blood spatter evidence, as well as, of course, as the Reeva Steenkamp's post-mortem, which was completed very soon after her death. We understand that the parts of the investigation that the state is now concentrating on is procuring witness statements from people who knew both Reeva Steenkamp and Oscar Pistorius, or were associated with one or both of them, and to talk about the dynamics of their relationships and also Oscar's previous behavior in other relationships. So they really seem to be taking quite a character approach to this prosecution. They want to, I think, suggest that Oscar Pistorius had a temper problem and had manifestly demonstrated either violence or strong displays of temper in the past, essentially suggesting that he lost his temper in the morning hours when this event played out, and that he shot Reeva Steenkamp not by accident but out of anger.
Okay, so Karyn, we also know that the prosecution confirmed that there has been some kind of dialogue between the defense and the prosecution, but we also know in the backdrop that there has been a lot of the evidence that has been withheld from the likes of the defense. Do you have clarity and detail on this? Has everything that the prosecution has been exposed to by way of evidence been given to the defense as well?
No, not at all. Eleni, remember that the state is not under any obligation at this stage to share their docket with the defense. They can only give that docket to the defense if and when they finalize their investigation, which they are still doing. To provide it now would be highly prejudicial to their case and the gathering of evidence that needs to take place. So they'll only provide that docket when and if they finalize their investigation in August, which is what they've committed to. At that stage, they will also provide the defense with Oscar Pistorius' indictment, in which they will detail the sum total of the allegations against him, why they say he committed premeditated murder, and also reveal whether they intend to pursue charges over the illegal possession of ammunition, as they previously stated in the bail application.
Right. So the 19th of August, Karyn, is actually quite an important day also for Reeva Steenkamp's family for other reasons.
Well, we know that Reeva Steenkamp would have turned 30 on the day that Oscar Pistorius is to return to court. Of course, this will be a massively emotional experience for her family. They haven't come to court today, and we don't expect them to come in the ensuing days where postponements occur. Really no certainty at this stage whether they'll actually come to the trial, but they gave a very emotional interview to a international broadcaster, which was put on air last night, in which they described the loss of their daughter and how they found out that she had in fact been killed. So definitely a very emotional day for them. And again, in this case, nothing happens without drama following it.
Okay, Karyn. And also, from what we understand, I mean, just very quickly, what was the demeanor of Oscar Pistorius? Also still looking down. That's kind of the shot that we had for the most part that preceded February the 14th in court. Was that sort of the same Oscar that you saw today?
Very calm. He was clean shaven, did not show really any emotion, a very sort of almost blank expression, but obviously trying to control his emotions in the midst of that media barrage that he faced when he walked into the Pretoria Magistrate's Court.
Thank you so much for that update, Karyn. Much appreciated. eNCA reporter Karyn Maughan outside the Pretoria Magistrate's Court, where murder-accused Oscar Pistorius' case has been adjourned until the 19th of August for the prosecution and defence to pull together their evidence.
News that moves. eNCA.com.